My name is Dorothy Malone, Administrative Assistant to Dr. Kelly Clenchy, Superintendent of Schools. It is 6 p.m. on Wednesday evening, September 9th. I'd like to welcome you all to the middle school 7th and 8th Parent Forum. Please note that we will not be using the chat function during this meeting. However, we will give some time
Just started.
using the raise your hand function that are available with Zoom. If you called in by phone, push *9, which will also activate the raise your hand function. I will call upon the raised hands one at a time. Once called upon, you will be unmuted and asked to ask your question. Thank you, and I would like to now open the meeting up to Middle School Principal Jason Everhart.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you were able to make time for us tonight and to come get some information and get to know us a little bit and how things are going to work next week. It's hard to imagine that 6 days from now or 7 days from now, we will have completed our first day of school. It feels like forever ago. Emotionally, physically, right, mentally. I think we're all at a place where I think we're all ready for a change. And so we are happily accepting this challenge, and I think we're in a very good place. And so the goal tonight, normally we don't do a grade 7 or a grade 8 orientation. But given all of the changes, given all of the uncertainty, we just thought that it would be a good opportunity for us to share with our 7th and 8th grade families some of the things that have happened. And by and large, most of what you're going to hear tonight is really a repeat of what you've heard in school committee meetings or parent forums. There'll be some things that are new that are specific to our building, just in terms of how the day will work. We'll talk about schedules, and we'll talk about arrival and dismissal, and plenty of those things. So the goal is for us to be in and out in an hour, trying to keep everything nice and efficient so everybody can enjoy a meal with their family and have an opportunity to get to know us and some of the things that we're about. And so the way it'll work is we have a fairly short presentation. We'll go through some of the aspects of what it's going to be like at Littleton Middle School this year in the hybrid model in September. A number of families wrote questions, and I have those, and I'll make sure to address as many as I can. We'll also have a short time for Q&A. The one thing I guess what I will say is that this is not a school committee meeting. We're not going to try and make it a 4 or 5 hour event. There might be questions that you have that are specific to your students. If that's the case, I would ask that you email myself or Mr. Levangi, who you'll all meet in just a minute, and we'll be happy to take your individual emails and questions tomorrow or the next day or over the weekend. There might be some questions that are larger district level questions that I may say we'll wait for school committee. We have a meeting tomorrow night, so please don't be offended if that's the case. There are just some people that are able to speak at a much higher level than I am. So we're just going to keep it to LMS and what we're doing here, and hope that everybody has a good time and gets the information they need, and we can kind of go from there. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to say thank you to Dorothy and to Judy for making themselves available tonight. It's an extremely busy week and a lot going on, and they are here out of their good graces and their own free time to be with us, to run this meeting, to help me out so that I can focus on you and your questions and your students. So thank you to Dorothy and Judy for taking that time. I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce our assistant principal, Matt Levangi.
Hey everyone, excited to be here. Looking forward for the school year to start, and can't wait to see everybody.
I know we have a number of teachers in the group tonight. I don't know if they want to be introduced, if they're looking to just kind of hang out. I see Jen Goff in the corner, so I'm going to call on Jen. The rest of you got lucky because I can't see you, so I'm not sure who's there, but if you want to introduce yourself. Jen, you want to start? You're on mute. Yeah.
Muted. All right. I'm usually better at that. And Amy Tatro is also here, by the way. She's not getting out of it. I teach math. Looking forward to meeting the kids. And if there's any specific math questions I can help with, I'm happy to.
I can't believe this.
Well,
all right, Amy, do you want to say hello?
Sure.
I'm having technology problems. I'm trying to log into the school call. Hold on, and it keeps connecting to my Bluetooth. So then it takes.
Amy, you should be able to unmute now.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking forward to a great start to the year, and I can't wait to meet all the 7th graders.
Jason, you need to unmute. Thank you.
I think, Jen, you're going to have to owe Amy lunch after calling her out and putting her on the spot like that. So thank you all for being here, and we hope this is an informative time. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Matt, if you want to go ahead and pull up our presentation. While he does that, we'll just talk a little bit about some of the safety features that we've gone over in meetings past. So none of this should be new, but it'll be an opportunity for a refresher. While Matt gets that presented on the screen, one of the things that I want to address, the first thing is around masks. We really take this topic seriously at our building, and we want to make sure that students are coming into school with what they need. And so we're just going to be upfront and honest. The expectation for every student coming into Littleton Middle School is that they are wearing a mask when they enter the building. We will have staff at each entrance. If a student gets off the bus and they don't have their mask on, they won't be allowed to enter the building until they put it on. If they've forgotten it or lost it, we might have some extra. We'll definitely have some extras, but we just want to make sure that every student coming in the building has that mask. If they take the mask off as soon as they walk through the doors, then we may end up with a little bit of a problem. And so I want to be open and honest with you about that expectation. You know, sometimes middle school kids, they can get a little defiant, or they want to stretch their independence a little bit. This is not one of those areas where we allow that. There are plenty of opportunities for students to be themselves and to develop their identities. But when it comes to safety, we really do have a zero tolerance policy on that. So with that, we also need to talk about the kinds of masks. We're talking about, it doesn't have to be the N95 mask, but it should at the very least be the double layer filtered kind of mask that are readily available now. Having students tie off a bandana or using a neck gaiter is not really, the science just doesn't support our students being able to wear that in the building. And while we recognize there are personal choices that we all have in life, we have to think about the greater good of our students and our staff. And so it is the expectation that every student will wear a mask, and they'll wear it all day long. In the rare case of willful defiance, kid says, "I'm not wearing it, you can't make me," then we remove that student from the classroom and we make a phone call home. And I want to be open and honest with that so that all of our families can feel safe knowing that the school is prepared to handle those moments. But I don't foresee that being an issue. I've only been in Littleton 3 years, but that kind of behavior is not something that we've seen in our building. And I don't expect that that's going to be the case now. I think our students will take it very seriously. I know our families do. I know our staff does. Everybody's on a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of edge right now. And so we just want to make sure that everybody's operating under that knowledge when they walk in the building. So as you know, we're all beginning with our hybrid model. And I just want to review, again, this was presented at another meeting a few weeks ago, but just sort of how we began to look at it. The way our task force started this process was to really look at it from the student perspective. What's the student's day going to look like? What are the things that we need to plan and prepare for? And if we look at it by following the students, it helped us a lot to determine what are the plans that we need to have in place, what are the things that we need to be aware of. And we continue to do that even now. You know, while our plans are set and I really do believe that we're ready to go, and things that aren't ready to go, they will be in the next day or two. We also are very reflective and continue to look at things and examine new ideas, especially with feedback. Sometimes people come in with a great idea. So we are flexible as we move forward, and we'll continue to do so as the year progresses. There will undoubtedly be things that we planned really well that just don't get off on the right foot. And I think we can all admit that sometimes no matter how much you plan, something goes wrong. And so we just want to make sure that we are in a place where we are nimble enough to be able to adjust to it when it happens, and reflective enough to be able to really think about what changes we need to make and how that's going to be best for all of our students. So really, to make the hybrid model work at Littleton Middle School, we really have to have a partnership. And it's not just a partnership between students and teachers. This involves everybody. So we're really going to go through our 4 largest groups and what we really need everybody to do in order to make this work. So the first thing is a change from the spring, and that attendance is compulsory. It's mandatory in all classes. In the spring, there were opportunities for students to be optionally present, depending on what was going on at home. We wanted to be respectful and responsive to families that were going through hardship, and so we created sort of a loose structure. As we enter this program in September, we really want to try to recreate as much as we possibly can the look and feel of school and all its expectations. And so the expectation is that students will attend all classes. Teachers will take attendance prior to every class. So we will know whether a student is at school or at home if they are attending their classes. We don't want parents to leave for work and a child's at home and just assuming that the parent is assuming that the kids are in their classes all day. We'll find that they're not. We want to make sure that that's the case. So we'll be taking regular attendance in all the classes. We ask that students they show their faces during live instruction. We know that students can also be fickle. We also know that they can be shy and anxious, and they may not want to show their faces. But for our educators, it makes it very difficult to be able to assess levels of engagement, levels of understanding, to see responses. Body language is everything when you're teaching. And so being able to see the students is going to be a real important part of our instruction. While there will certainly be exceptions to the rule for kids who have different needs, and we will certainly explore those with families as the need arises, it is expected that by far the vast majority of students have their faces shown when they're in the classroom. We ask that they're not walking around the room with their computer, going to the fridge, laying down in bed, stretching out on the couch, that they are trying to be as much like a student when they're at home as they possibly can be. We're asking that students have their Chromebook charged and that they have their materials ready. Notebooks, pens, pencils, whatever it is they might need for the day, that they have that ready to go. And that they complete their homework and projects in a timely manner. We had a real soft homework and project policy last year because we wanted to be responsive to families. But what we found is that it created real hardships for our teachers because they were just getting pummeled at the end of the year with late work. And so we really want to make sure that students are completing their work in a timely manner so that they're able to keep up with what's going on. They're able to demonstrate their knowledge and show that mastery before they move on. Our educators have responsibilities. We're asking them to return grading policy and late work to pre-COVID expectations, that they develop a clearly defined schedule for assignments and homework. That part is going to be real important because as students spend a large portion of their day in online learning, we don't want days where there's massive amounts of work on one day and nothing on another. So we're asking that our teams, that our educators work together to make sure that assignments, homework, projects are spread out equally so that students can learn how to be a student again. It's been close to 6 months, and we're going to have some of those growing pains. And then we're also asking families or asking educators to really take the time to provide clear and consistent communication with our families. One of the things that came out in the parent survey in June was that families really wanted to hear more from teachers. And so we're asking that our educators really respond. And we have a number of ways that we're going to do that. So that's a real hallmark of what we're going to try to achieve this fall, is making sure that families are in the loop with changes, with ideas, with student progress, and providing. We don't want to inundate people, but we do want to make sure that we are keeping people up to date and current with some of the information that's happening out there. All right, Matt, next slide, please. Us as administrators, we have responsibilities. One of the responsibilities that we set out weeks ago was to do exactly what we're doing tonight, to provide these town hall events. We had our 6th grade event last night, and we want to make sure that we're giving families as much information as we possibly can, that we're keeping them in the loop, and to provide these meetings is a real helpful way to do that, so that people aren't sending emails and having to wait for days to get it. They can get the information right away. In fact, one parent last night suggested that we do these more often throughout the year. And I really like that idea, just taking an hour once a month or every couple of months to be able to communicate with families in a large way, I think will go a long way to help. So we're definitely going to consider that. We also need to provide professional development for our teachers. We are asking them to do a whole different style of teaching than they're used to. This is nothing like what it was in the spring. And as a result, many of our teachers are going to need time to perfect that craft. You spend 15, 20 years developing a certain instructional practice style in the classroom, and then all of a sudden we're taking that away and we're adding cameras and microphones and remote locations, and we're going to need a little bit of time. And that's where myself and Mr. Levangie, we have to support our educators by providing that professional development so they can continue to grow. They will. We have every confidence that our teachers are going to be excellent, but they are going to need a little time to work through this and work through the kinks and get creative with the technology. We also have things that we need from our families. Again, trying to establish that partnership so it's not just student and teacher, but everybody involved. We're asking, with 6 days left to go, that families begin to establish routines at home. If you have a quiet space, if you can find one where a student can set up a desk, or even if it's just a tabletop, to have their materials ready, headphones if they need it, getting used to the early start time. Students will be expected to be in their flex block, and we'll talk about flex in a minute, at 7:20 in the morning, and be wearing their headphones if needed, or at least be online during that time until 1:45. And so developing those responsibilities so that students don't crash and burn the first week because they're tired, it will be a huge help. One of the big things that we really need, and this cannot be understated, is for families to help their students begin to wear masks for longer durations of time. Whether you start tonight or tomorrow with wearing it for 15 minutes, if you haven't done so, I know many of our families have had their kids wearing masks all summer, and wearing them for a few hours won't be a thing. Others, that may not be the case. And so with 6 days left to go, we're asking that families really take that time to begin to practice with their children wearing the mask, especially when it's a little bit warm out, getting used to it, right? Getting one that fits properly and just wearing it multiple hours at a time, and so that they're ready. And we'll talk about mask breaks because we'll certainly have that option. And then one thing, that we hope never happens, but we have to be prepared in case it does. If a student should feel ill, if a student should show symptoms, we have to be immediately responsive to that. And we certainly have those plans in place. But one of the things that's going to happen is we'll need to call home and have somebody come pick up the child. And many of our families might be at work. So one of the things that we're asking families to do is to set up a plan. If your child should start to show symptoms during the day, is there someone that can come get the student and to be able to take them home? We don't want to leave them in a supervised room by themselves for hours. We don't want them sitting in our lobby, and we sure don't want to just have them sit outside. We want somebody to be able to come get them. So if you haven't done so yet, it'd be really helpful for us to know that you have a plan of who's going to come get the child in case there is an illness while someone's at work or somewhere else. Next slide, Matt. So let's get into the schedules. That's clearly what most people want to know about, and that's what we'll spend a good portion of our time. The way we look at scheduling our students is really by putting them essentially into 4 groups. There are the students who will be doing the in-person portion of the hybrid, right? There's group A, whose last names begin with A through K, and then there's group B, whose last names L through Z. We have a group of students who will be remote only 5 days a week. And then we have a group of students who will be attending classes 4 days a week. Those families will be contacted individually. And so those 4 groups are the groups that we have. So developing a schedule that allows all 4 groups to be able to enter and exit the classroom effectively, safely, enter and exit the hybrid model or the remote model. It was no easy task, and we're still developing those schedules, and we'll talk more about what that looks like in just a second. The way that basically, in a nutshell, whether a student is in person or whether a student is remote, they will follow the same schedule every day. Their classes will be the same whether they are in the building or whether they're at home. Really, the only thing that changes is the geography. And this allows us to be able to move between models if that should become necessary without having to implement whole new schedules and disrupt students' education or flow. If a student starts off in hybrid, for example, for the first week of school, and then for whatever reason needs to go remote, they're not having to change classes, they're not having to change sections. They just simply don't go on that day that they used to go, and they would take the class at home. So in this way, our schedule really allows for that freedom of movement within. One of the features that we wanted to make sure that we put into it For those of you that are familiar with the Littleton Middle School schedule, in years past, every day started off with what we call a flex block, a homeroom essentially. And it was 30 minutes, and it was an opportunity for students to get extra homework help if they needed it, if they needed to finish a test, any kind of remediation that could happen that way. What we really wanted to do was provide opportunities for students and teachers to connect in a non-academic way. So one of the features of our schedule is to take that flex block and to split it into two parts. There's a 15-minute session in the morning and a 10-minute session at the end of the day. And we'll talk in just a minute about what those will look like. So that's a new feature of our schedule. Obviously, we're going to be moving siblings into the same groups. If we happen to have families with students in the same household with different last names, please reach out to myself or Mr. Levangi so we can make sure to schedule that appropriately. We think we have everybody, but if you're not sure, please reach out to us and let us know. And then as much as we can, we're going to try and keep students in their cohorts. It gets tough though in 7th and 8th grade because the students we have leveled math classes and we have choices in language classes. So keeping the kids all together like an elementary model simply just doesn't work at the middle school. It's one of the joys of middle school is being able to have different classes with different kids so that you see different students, unlike the elementary students. We want to create those opportunities, but we want to limit them so that we don't have a total mixing of students. So whenever possible, we try to keep students in the groups that they're in. Next, Matt. So here you can see that's a sample schedule of how it works. So many of you in 7th and 8th grade are familiar with this. Those that are new to Littleton Middle School, I'll just walk you through this really, really quickly. We use a rotating schedule, and each student has 5 of their on-team classes, and they would have 2 UAs per day. In order for us to reduce the number of students in the hallways and reduce the number of classes, what we did is decided to take the UAs, instead of having, let's say, a UA on a Monday, Tuesday afternoon, we just combine it into a longer 80-minute UA and have that once a week. For those students who are remote, there are classes that you may not be in person, that you may not see that teacher, but that was going to happen in the hybrid model regardless of whether we had it as a Monday, Tuesday thing or a Thursday, Friday thing. So for example, under the old way, you might have your UA, you might have a music class twice on a Wednesday. That would be remote regardless. And so it's unfortunate. We've had discussions around maybe at the term, is there a way that we can rotate those sections so that students aren't stuck in a remote setting with a UA teacher for the entire year? We'll get a little bit further down the road, make sure everything's working right to start the year, but it's definitely something we want to see. How can we mix that up so students have the opportunity to see all of their UA teachers live and in person? If you look at the schedule, for example, if you look at the Monday column, you'll see that the day starts off with flex for 15 minutes. The goal here is really to provide an opportunity for students and teachers to connect. Whether you're in person or whether you're remote, you will be in flex block during that 15 minutes. Teachers take attendance, we give announcements, and it's also a time for people just to talk. You know, how are things going? How was your night? How was your weekend? What was summer like? You know, any COVID stories, things like that teachers want to have the opportunity to get to know kids and build those relationships. One of the things that's different than the spring, you know, when we shut it down in the spring, those relationships had been well established. We're starting the year without that luxury. And so every one of our teachers, or almost every one of our teachers, is going to have students in their classes that they don't know. And so we wanted to provide an opportunity for our teachers to get to know their students as people before they become students. And so we're hoping that flex is used to do just that, just to start that process and develop those connections. Some of our students may not have seen many people outside of their families in the last 5 or 6 months. So this is going to be a great opportunity for kids to get to know somebody else as well. If you look at that Monday column, you'll see the sections where it says section 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are our grade level teams. Kids will have the same teachers, but the rotation may change. So your child might be in a section 1 ELA class, but a friend might have a section 5 ELA class. It might be with the same teacher, just may not be at the same time. So on Monday, they go in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, according to the sample. And then on Tuesday, they reverse 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is so that students who struggle in the morning don't always have their toughest class first thing in the morning. They have an opportunity to mix that up throughout the day so that they have an opportunity to show them, to show the teacher their best, their classmates the best. And it's also an opportunity for our teachers to get to know kids in a different way. I know when I taught, The way that I taught section 1 and 2 looked very different than what 4 and 5 would look like. And so students should have that opportunity as well to see teachers at different times of the day to get to know their personalities a little bit different. Then within that time, we'll have our UA blocks. They are 80 minutes. Our UA teachers are working extremely hard. This is a brand new experience for them. And I want to give credit to that group because they really have embraced this and are taking on the challenge of planning for an 80-minute block. And it's not easy. And we can certainly talk about what that'll look like in terms of instructional practice here in a few minutes. We have lunch times that are set throughout the day, and then we finish the day with a 10-minute flex. This is an opportunity for students to return to their flex block. It's great for sort of recapping the day, just a quick check-in between teachers and students. It's also an opportunity for students with executive functioning problems to be able to get their bags together, get the things that they need, organize their stuff before they're dismissed and then realize they've forgotten things at school. So we really think this schedule is going to allow for some of those great opportunities for kids to get what they need. UAs will be the same time every day. Lunch will be the same time every day. Just the classes will rotate. So Matt, if you'll go to the next slide, please. This is a sample schedule of a sixth grader this year. And so when many of you get your schedules, it'll look something like this. It might be confusing when you first look at it with all the different colors and everything. So we just want to take a minute to break it down so that everybody's aware of what the schedule looks like. So this is an actual sixth grade schedule for this year. So if you look in the Monday column, you'll notice that this particular sixth grader starts off every day with Vaughn Cook, the science teacher. Then in their first period, they will go to their UAs. So they'll have art on Monday, health on Tuesday, chorus on Wednesday, and down the line. So this will be an 80-minute block. During this time, teachers will get their prep, they'll have their team meeting, and get ready for the day. At the end of that UA block, this particular student on Monday will go to math with Miss Deary, then language with Miss Hicks, then have lunch, science, and down the line. On Tuesday, it'll be the reverse of that. So they'll start off with the UA, but the rest of the classes will go in the reverse order, where the day before they ended with ELA, they'll begin the first of their general ed classes with ELA, working backwards. And this way, we try to make sure that students have an opportunity to have different classes at different times, for teachers to have all that. And it looks confusing. It does. I know that we have parents every year who, oh my God, I can't figure out the schedule, or the colors confuse me. Listen, I get it. It does. It looks worse. But I will tell you this, the kids get it right away. It does not take very long for students to get it. And I promise our 7th and 8th graders, they know the way this schedule works, and they'll have no problem assimilating. But for those that haven't really had a chance to look at it, or kids that are new to the district and families that are new to the district, this is the way that it will work. One of the questions, I'll just go ahead and answer now. A lot of the questions that I've gotten over the last couple of days is when will schedules be ready? So I'll try and give you the shortest answer that I can. If possible, Friday. That's the hope. Most likely Monday. The way this is working, I'm most likely going to need to spend yet another weekend cranking out schedules. Not without going too much into it, but just to explain to you why. We have anywhere between 132 and 140 students in each grade. And with leveled classes in the 7th and 8th grade, it gets to be very tricky because students might be in an algebra class in 8th grade, but also have Latin, which doesn't leave a lot of flexibility in terms of where we schedule them. So trying to get schedules that give the kids what they want and fits in nicely is one thing. Then we have to balance the schedules to make sure the class sizes are relatively the same. We don't want to have somebody with a class of 13 while somebody's having a class of 32. So then we have to try and balance that. This year presents a bigger difficulty. Normally when we balance, we work in our special education students, making sure that any pullout time or service time is there, and that impacts the schedule because that might throw the balance off. And all of this normally takes weeks. We would normally spend from the 1st of July to about mid-August working on it. Because of the nature of the way this is going, we're trying to do all of this scheduling in about a 2-week span. So we're really trying to condense a massive amount of work into a very short period of time. But the one real challenge for this year, and this is where I'm asking for your patience and why I'm giving you such a long answer, not only do we have all that work to do, but then we have to balance the classes in terms of in-person versus remote. What we don't want to have happen is a class of students show up, So for example, we use Miss Goff. We don't want students to show up to her pre-algebra class and all of a sudden 19 of them are in the L through Z category on a Thursday, Friday, and all of a sudden we realize we can't space 6 feet apart. And then we've really got a problem on our hands. So that's what we're having to do right now, is go through every section of every class, count the kids that are A through K, count the kids that are L through Z, who's remote, who's hybrid, who's 4 days, and then trying to balance that so that we never have more than 12 students in a class. We're just about done with that, and so far so good. But it has been a challenge. And so I'm going to ask for a little bit more patience this week while we take care of a lot of other things around the school. We know it's been a bit of a delay in the schedules. I will say that in years past, we normally don't give the schedules out until just a couple of days before the school year starts anyway. It's my understanding that before I arrived, we used to give the schedules out a number of days in advance. And we noticed that that created problems for us because students begin to talk, hey, I want to be in this class with this friend. I don't want to be in the class with this person. And we get a million schedule requests. By waiting until a couple days before, we found last year and the year before that really helped with that process. I will say this year, schedule changes are going to be really difficult for us to do. When we do push out the schedules, whether it's Friday or Monday, there may be mistakes in the schedules. Well, I got a bunch of emails over the summer. Can my kid drop band and take general music? Or can I override into algebra? Or can we have this language? Or I forgot to sign up for a language. You put me in Latin and what I really wanted was Spanish. Those things that we can somewhat work with, but just changing classes to be with friends is going to be extremely difficult because we cannot risk overloading the classes with students who are in the same alphabet group so that there's too many. So when you get your schedule, if there's a genuine mistake, please reach out to myself or Mr. Levangi. We'll do our best to address it right away. But if it's not a critical thing, we may give us a couple of days to work through that until we can make sure the numbers work out. And so, like I said, Monday afternoon at the latest, Friday if everything goes the way that I'm hoping it will, and we'll go from there. All right, Matt, next slide. So when it comes to how the school is going to work this year, one of the things that we heard a lot from educators was what are the school rules going to be? What are going to be the big, COVID hybrid rules? And we talked a lot at the administrative level around, what are the rules? We talked about it with our task forces and our team meetings, leadership team meetings as well. And what we had hoped is exactly what we got, that we would come up with 3 basic rules. Nice, simple, easy to remember. So we're going to call it the big 3. And myself and Mr. Levangi, both being basketball fans, we immediately liked this. Diane Tricana, 6th grade ELA teacher, she came up with this graphic. So I'm not going to say no to it. I like it. But our big 3 rules as a school that we do expect that all students adhere to. That when you walk in the building or when you sign in online in the morning, that your camera is on, that the microphone is off, and that your phone is silent. If every student in the building can do these 3 things, we can really begin the process of teaching and learning. It really helps if the camera's on and the mic is off so that we know students are present. We're not hearing ambient noise. The sound is spoons clinking in cereal bowls or siblings yelling at each other. This will really be helpful. And then keeping the phone silent. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. So those are our big 3. Now, the 8th grade team and the 7th grade team, they may develop their own subset of expectations for students in their grade. 6th grade kids and 8th grade kids are very different. And so what works for one group may not necessarily work for another. So we're allowing the 7th and 8th grade teams to develop their own set. And so as the year goes on, as the first week goes on, those expectations will be communicated to students, but it will be done at the grade level. So if you have questions, you can certainly reach out to our grade level leaders, myself or Mr. Levangi, and we can fill you in on more of that. But those are our big 3 school-wide rules. Next slide, Matt. So one of the things that came up, we're using the 6th grade slide because it's so pretty. I'd hate for not only use it once, but we really want to look and think about this, across the building. As an educator now entering my 21st year, starting off in my career with no cell phones in school to now having them be as prolific as they are, they're not going away. And most students have them. And so rather than trying to eliminate them, we're trying to figure out how do we allow students to have the freedom of having their phone, but also being respectful of the learning environment and what really is important. So really, this is the way we're looking at it. We're not allowing students to use lockers, at least to start the year. We feel like there's going to be too much clustering in the hallways as students are trying to get in and out of their lockers. So if students have phones, we're asking them to put them on silent and put them in their backpacks. So most students will have a backpack that they bring. We ask that the phone is there. We talked at great length, myself and Mr. Levangie, around cell phones, and we just didn't feel like it was appropriate to say no cell phones, because at the end of the day, we're in a pandemic, and you may want to touch base with your child, and your child may want to touch base with you, especially after not being in school for so long. We want that opportunity to happen. We just don't want it to happen in the middle of the class, or where students are asking to be excused and then going into the bathroom and spending 20 minutes on their phone playing a video game. We're asking that the phones are silent and in the backpacks. What we used to do was we had kind of a shoe holder that you put on the back of a closet door, and that would be where students could drop their cell phones on their way into class. But really thinking about shared spaces and shared items, we just didn't feel it was safe for students to be putting their cell phones into these pockets and then reaching in to get their phone after some other student may have done the same. And so we're asking that that the cell phones stay in the backpacks. There will be opportunities for students to be on them if they need to check text messages at lunch, if they need to do it at certain times of the day. Some of our teachers allow students to use cell phones if they want to play certain games. Like, we still want that to happen. We just have to make sure that students are really being respectful of this policy. And then many times when a phone goes off in class, what we've seen so many times is it's actually the parent who's calling or texting. And we definitely want that parent communication, but that's part of the partnership as well. If it's something important, we ask that parents call the office, and we'll be happy to communicate that to students. We just don't want students to be distracted by their cell phones. And so that's the way our cell phone policy will work this year. All right, next slide, Matt. So before we get to the big questions, I just have a couple things that I want to address, and then we'll take questions from the group. Homework. I am highly encouraging our teachers, highly encouraging them to either reduce or eliminate homework as much as they can this year. As an educator, I have never believed that massive amounts of homework equal challenging classes. I think what really is challenging is the homework itself and how applicable it is to what they're learning, how important it is to their life. Are they able to use it and make sense of it? Is it meaningful? And so I'm really asking our educators to really consider their homework policies, to consider the types of homework that go home, and as often as possible to eliminate that for a few reasons. One, we want to reduce screen time. For students who are at home all day, we certainly don't want kids to spend 6 hours online and then have 3 hours of online homework. To me, that just is not going to instill the love of learning that we want. So we do want whatever does go home to be meaningful. So there will be things that go home. Students will have projects. They'll have extended assignments that they'll be working on. There may be situations where they're working on something in class, and a student that doesn't get finished may have the opportunity to work at home that night. So it's not as if we're eliminating homework just for the sake of eliminating it. We just really want to make it meaningful and try and reduce the stress and anxiety that often comes with that kind of homework, to reduce the screen time. And there's also an added benefit for our educators, because everything is going to be so new, to really reduce and make manageable the amount of work that our teachers are spending grading, providing feedback, and communicating those scores and information to students. Our arrival and dismissal. So this is going to be a new feature. You can see, and we'll take you on a virtual tour here in just a minute. But if you're looking at the front of the building, as students arrive on the bus, for bus students, when they get off the bus, the 7th grade students are going to go to the left of the front doors, and they're going to enter the building at the 6th grade hallway. There's a stairwell in that entrance that takes students right up to 7th grade. This way, they're not in the hallways bunching up with 6th graders. They're not trying to push through 8th graders to get where they need to be. They'll have their own entrance that takes them safely right to the 7th grade hallway where they can go to their flex block. For 8th graders, they'll go to the right of the front doors and they'll enter the building near the gym. There is a set of stairs near the gym that takes students right up to the 8th grade hallway. This way they have their own entrance, and then we won't have that bunching, which is really important to us. Bathrooms work much the same way. We have, sometimes our school, like any middle school in the country, looks like the home of little wanderers, with students who want to be in class on one side of the school and go to the bathroom on the other side of the school. And we really need to eliminate that. We need students to use the restroom that is closest to them so it can be monitored. How we do that, we are still developing. Myself and Mr. Levangi will be spending a lot of times, I think, outside of restrooms, making sure the kids are using those appropriately. And so we're asking that our teachers develop a system for allowing students to be able to use the restroom, but not going 7 times a day just because they want to get out of class. And so some of these things we will continue to develop and refine as we see the need. That's the biggest part of it. Matt, let's go ahead and go on the virtual tour, and then I'll address a couple other things before we get going. So for those that are new to our building, this tour, I am just blown away by this. And I wish I could take even an ounce of credit, but I can't. All of the credit for this goes to one of our special education teachers, Angie Gresco, and a former student, Brandon Zabo. They put together this virtual tour. So for those that are new to the building, and tonight I will send out the link to this so everybody has it. But because we're not able to do tours right now of our building, we'd love to be able to take small groups in. We're just not going to be able to do it. And so this will be a great opportunity for those students who maybe are a little anxious because they're new to the building, not sure what it looks like. This will be a great opportunity to sort of walk through. So Matt, if you want to click that slide right there. So one of the great things that Angie and Brandon did was they brought a drone, and they flew a drone over the grounds to get an aerial view of what our school looks like. So it's a really neat way to kind of see it from that distance. Here you can see the bus lane, right? You can see the drop-off lane. You can see Miss Gresco pulling up in her SUV right there. As students enter the building on the buses, they'll come in the far right lane. Students who are being dropped off, you'll see that you're in the center lane there. You can see we're coming up on my car. I'm parked in the drop-off lane. When you are dropping students off, or families who are bringing their students each day, one thing that we're going to ask, you see where my car is parked there? You don't have to wait to get that far to drop your child off. You can drop them off at the back of the lane and let them walk to the front of the building. We have somebody outside making sure that the traffic is safe, that kids will be able to enter inside. But one thing we noticed last year was so many parents waiting until they got to the front of the lane to drop their kids off, and it backed up traffic all the way out onto Russell Street and down. When we asked families to just let the kids, once they're in the drop-off lane, onto the sidewalk, traffic went way smoother. And so we're going to ask that families continue to do that. Obviously, with wet or snowy weather, that changes a little bit. But while it's dry and warm, we ask that families do that. One other thing that I would ask, our parking lot, it's a large parking lot, and it doesn't always fill up. And something that we've noticed over the last couple of years are, in some cases, families who are in a rush, and understandably so. You're running late and you need to get to work, so you want to skip the line and just drop a student off in the parking lot. That has been borderline dangerous in a couple of instances last year, where in one case a teacher was almost hit by a parent going through the parking lot, and in one case a student was almost hit. Students tend to dart out in front of traffic and not really be looking, and if families are going through that parking lot, they may not see those students. So we're going to ask that people don't use the parking lot for drop-off and don't use it for pickup. So if you're trying to beat the buses and you want to pick your kid up real quick and beat them out, please don't, because we have students who get let out a little bit early to walk. We get teachers who might be leaving at that time. We're going to ask the families just not use the parking lot for that. All right, Matt, if you want to take us back, if you can show us either the 7th or the 8th grade wing. So one of the things they also did was create an interactive map. So when you go, you'll see 2 things. Matt will show the video. They actually flew the drone down the hallway. It's awesome. And so you get a look at all of the different classrooms. So for students who are unfamiliar with Littleton Middle School, you can look and see just how the building looks. You can see where the classes are by using the map right next to that. One of the things about the map that you'll notice a series of arrows moving back and forth. That's going to be the traffic pattern that we have set up for our students. It's going to be much like driving traffic. You're going to walk down the lane on the right side. As you enter the hallway, you're going to walk down the lane on the right side as you exit. And if you are leaving, let's say Miss Abbott's class, for example, and you need to enter Miss Finnerty's room, you may have to wait for a break in traffic to make that left turn. So we're going to get a little early intro to driver's ed. We'll do this safely distanced because the numbers that are in the building are small enough. We know that we can accommodate that in our hallways, but we are asking that students, just like the grocery store, follow the arrows. wait for a break before making that left turn lane. And we're asking that students, as they go behind, make sure they are safely distanced. We have markers on the floor about 6.5, 7 feet apart, so that the students will know exactly where they need to be. The hallways will be split, but you can see that's the traffic pattern that will allow. So Matt, if you want to go back, one of the features about this virtual tour as well is you can meet our teachers, you can meet our office staff, you can meet all kinds of people who are in. So if you go to the meet our staff function, you'll see all kinds of videos. If you want to click any one of them, Matt, go for it. All right, we'll go with us. So there's me, there's him, and you can certainly hear a quick message from us or any of the teachers that have submitted videos in this way. And so we really hope that this is an opportunity for students who are a little unsure, 7th grade students last year who are going to 8th grade, who aren't sure who their teachers are, want to have an opportunity just to get to know what they look like and sound like. We'll certainly push out this link tonight so that families have that opportunity. All right. I think that's it in terms of that. So before we get to the questions and answers, I just want to go through a couple things really quickly. And this is just a moment to be perfectly honest. We've planned a lot, and I really know that we're going to be ready to go. But as I said earlier, there are going to be some things that go wrong, including tech issues. We are doing a different style of learning. All of our teachers will have been given a document camera, sort of a tower document camera, and it will sit on a table in front of them. And the camera will be up at face level. And as they're teaching the students in front of them, the document camera will capture their face. So you won't actually see the students in the classroom. I know there's some questions around privacy. It's not the eye in the sky in the corner of the classroom capturing everything. It's really a camera focusing just on the teacher. When a teacher goes to show a presentation, that's what students will see. Teachers can certainly turn the mic on and off. So if they are taking questions from students, that way not everybody at home has to hear the ambient noise or the questions. Sometimes students act silly. We certainly don't want that to be something that's broadcast out to everybody. And so teachers will have full control over that. But there are going to be tech issues. So when that happens on Wednesday, and it will happen, we just know it will. It's just a matter of who is it going to be. Before you send that angry email at 8 o'clock, I would just ask that please be nice to us these first few days. Everybody's working so hard to make this work and putting in massive amounts of time and energy. And we're just going to ask for a little patience as we work through some of those tech issues that we know are going to happen. The other part too is really around the type of education. And also in a moment of pure honesty, we are Littleton Middle School. We are not a grad school online program. We are middle school educators doing middle school level instruction. And so as we work through those programs and as we work through the new technology and the added features, our teachers will get better at it. I know they will. I don't have a doubt in my mind. But there is going to be a bit of a learning curve because this is so new. We're asking teachers to really take a risk and try something different and something different than they're used to. And so we just ask for your patience as we get through this process. If certain tech issues continue to happen, please let us know if there's something that we can fix on our end. But that first couple, 3 days, let us, just give us a little bit of patience and leeway, and we'll try and do our best to work that out as much as we can. We will use Google Classroom as our platform. One of the questions that parents ask is, how are we getting students into the classroom the first day? This should be a lot easier for 7th and 8th grade students than it is for 6th. While we'll still refine this, and I want to talk to our grade level teams, one of the things that's going to happen is once the schedules are ready, teachers can add your students into their individual Google Classrooms. They can just simply copy and paste email into, let's say, a Section 1 ELA class. What'll happen then is the teacher will then send an invite to all the students in that class. The students at home, starting early next week, Monday, Tuesday, can check their email and begin to accept those invitations. What'll happen then is on Wednesday morning, when they open up and they log into their Google Classroom page, they'll see all of the different classrooms with all the Google Meet links that they can simply click on and go. So we don't have to have a massive meeting and then trying to get everybody organized. We can do a lot of this before the year even starts, so that when students show up on Wednesday, if they've checked their email, if they've accepted those invitations, they'll be ready to go come 7:20 on Wednesday morning. And so those are really the big issues that we have that are changing, and some of the things that we're very excited about. So with that, I just want to answer a few of the questions that teachers or that students asked, and then give time for families who might have questions. Again, questions around schedules. Like I said, hopefully Friday, most likely Monday. Again, what happens if there are tech issues? Trust me, our teachers will know right away. You don't have to call and email right away. But if we get into the next week and those same tech issues are happening, please let us know, because it may be something that we are not aware of. A lot of great questions were submitted. One of them is great. What if a child who is in a hybrid situation is not feeling well one day and needs to stay home? Can they still attend classes remotely? Yes. So if you're in a section 3 math class and on a Monday, Tuesday, you're normally in the building, but you wake up and you have a runny nose and you think, you know what, I'm not going to school that day. You can attend that class remotely. You'll have the remote link to do so. So there's no problem there. The only thing that changes for the teacher is just one less student in front of them, but the student will be live and online with everyone else at home. So if the student is able to log on, they can still attend their classes, and that the expectation is that they do so. A sub part of that question that I thought was great was around snow days. We have not had a discussion around snow days, but I can tell you that this level of technology, I wonder if snow days are a thing of the past. If we can do remote learning and not have to call snow days, that might be something that happens. I don't want to say for sure, but it's certainly something that we will talk about as time goes on. In terms of kids and the materials, the supply lists are out. You may notice that some of the lists are a little bit lengthy. One of the things that I'm going to ask our team leaders to do is have a discussion with their teams this week and early next about what items can stay home, what items need to come to school. We don't want kids lugging 2 backpacks to school. We don't want kids carrying a 40-pound pack because they're trying to get every binder and pencil and everything in the backpack. Most of our teachers use online textbooks. There are a few books that still get used, but it's nothing like it was when I grew up, where you had the large stack of books that you tried to hold and shove them in your locker, and the giant 3-ring binders. A lot of that has gone away, and so we'll talk to our teachers about what can stay at home, what needs to come with them, and what they can leave. So be waiting for that information as the days go on. We had a question around students and teachers being able to focus on the students that are in front of them as well as the students at home. Again, there's a learning curve here, but having explained the process with the tower camera, one of the things that classroom teachers will have, and they've mostly been set up, but will continue to do so, is a second monitor. So in theory, if a teacher is standing in front of the classroom and they're looking out at their students, right, rather than trying to bend over to look at their computer monitor, having a larger monitor off to the side or near them where they can focus on that so that they're instructing in front and looking to the side. I think our teachers are going to get really proficient at being able to see the students at home, being able to see the students in the classroom, and still being able to run their presentations. It'll take time to learn and time to perfect. Mr. Levangi and I did, the first couple of meetings of the year using the style, and it was clunky and awkward and it felt weird. But even after the second day, you kind of start to get used to a little bit. So I really do think our teachers are going to become very proficient in being able to address the needs of both. And that will come with changes in instructional practice. I mentioned earlier we would talk about it. I guess this is as good a time as any, specifically around the UAs, but our other teachers will certainly have their freedom to do this. How do you do this so you're not just standing and talking at a student for 80 minutes or for 45 minutes? One of the things that we'll do is really look at what are the different kinds of practice. So one example that we're asking teachers to consider is really chunking the class into different parts. So let's say a teacher starts off the class with the first 10, maybe a 15-minute launch, right? Here we're going to preview what we're going to do. Here's what you need to know. All right, here's your task. At that point, a number of things can happen. The teacher can then mute themselves and turn off the camera and put up a timer and say, all right, we're all going to meet back here in 20 minutes. Students at home, here's what I want you to do. Students in the class, here's what I want you to do. And that way, both groups are working on the same thing or very similar things. All right, 20 minutes later, the timer goes off because the students at home will have been able to see it. The teacher will be able to see it. All right, let's get back together. What did you come up with? Whether it's math class or a history class, within that, students could even work together. You could have a student in class who's partnering with a student who's at home, and the two of them through a Google Doc or some kind of shared document would be able to work together. So the remote part isn't necessarily prohibitive to students to being able to work together. They just won't be able to work together in class. Those social distancing rules are still going to be in effect. The desks are 6 feet apart. They're not going to be able to push them together. When they eat lunch, they're going to be 6 feet apart. In the hallways, they're going to be 6 feet apart. I know a number of our students say they can't wait to see their friends. That's not going to happen the way that they're used to. That'll be a change. They'll see their friends, but it might be at the other end of the hallway, right? Or in a different class as they're coming back from bathroom. It's unfortunate, but it's the world that we live in. And it's the only way we can safely have students enter and exit our building and still get the education that they deserve. Another question around tests and quizzes. You know, that's part of the instructional practice. Can our teachers, and I know the answer is yes, begin, some of them move away from the traditional standardized multiple choice test and move more to project-based learning? You will certainly see that some teachers will begin to do that. They'll use things like flipped classroom, where students are doing things at night so they can have a discussion during the day instead of just sending kids home with homework. And so really, like, not just changing the way we assess students, but also when we do it. Mr. Levangie had a great idea for the teams to really sort of create a map of when these certain activities are going to happen so that students aren't being walloped on one day and not the other. And so we're going to ask teams as the weeks go on to really look at how they're assessing, when they're assessing, to make sure that it's evenly spread throughout the week so there isn't too much going on. Another question, what happens if a teacher is out sick? I know this was a topic at a recent school committee meeting. Our plan, and what I'm thinking that I'm going to ask teachers to do next week, is develop a series of lesson plans so that in case they are unable to show up, we have canned lessons. So that if the teacher can't be there, we have a substitute in the room. The substitute will work with the kids on the asynchronous part of it, right? Here's what kids are going to do. And those same plans will then be pushed out to students at home so that they're not having to worry about the sub teaching the class. They'll have work to do, kind of like we did with the Blizzard bags a couple of years ago. There'll be work that they could do. They may just not have the teacher giving that instruction. And so in this way, with teachers sort of preloading their classes with sub plans, it allows us to be able to make sure that the kids are still getting work to do, that they're still learning. It just may not be in the style, so that a teacher can feel free to take a day off if they're not feeling well and know that the lessons are still being taught. There was a question around half days. We are still continuing with half days in the district. Half days will work like they always have. The schedule, I have to create a new schedule, and I'll do that in the next week or so. I just haven't had a chance to create the specific half-day schedule, but that shouldn't take that long to do, and we'll certainly put that out there to people. Another question around updating Aspen. We want to make sure that parents have a real quick way of checking their students' grades, but one thing we want to make sure is for our families to recognize that if a student turns in work on a Monday, it may not be graded and always be graded and back to the student on Tuesday. You know, I feel for somebody like Ms. Abbott, if she has a stack of essays, 5-page essays that she has to read, there's no way she can get that done in a night. So there are some things that are going to take time. If Ms. Goff have the kids working on something that's maybe a 2 or 3 day thing, the kind of feedback that she would need to provide might not happen in a single day. So we are going to make sure that our teachers are updating Aspen regularly. It just may not be instantaneous. So just be wary of that, or be aware of that. If you have questions, please reach out to the teacher. They'll be happy to let you know where we are in that process. So with that, I think we've covered all the questions that have been asked. I think we've hit on all of our bullet points. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it open. I've spoken for a full hour now. If you have questions that are, again, specific to your child, please feel free to email myself or Matt individually. If they're larger district level questions, we'll ask you to wait and address those at school committee tomorrow night. But if they're questions specific around Littleton Middle School or how 7th and 8th grade works, we're happy to take those now. So Dorothy, whenever you're ready.
I don't have any raised hands as of yet. I think you filled them with all the information they need to know. That was great.
I put them all to sleep. No,
no, I don't think so. No, that was very good. Great meeting. No questions.
Okay, then.
All right.
Well, listen, all of our families. Oh, I see a raised hand.
There's one.
We almost got it.
All right. C, please ask your question.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Kathy LeDuc. I actually wanted to ask, my son will be fully remote. Mm-hmm. So when will materials be picked up? Like, is there a plan for that,
Oh,
or
yes,
is that
yes.
coming forward?
No, you know what? Great. I knew there were a couple things that I was forgetting, Kathy, and you got one of them. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
One of the problems that we ran into last year was, oh my God, how do we get materials to kids? If they're reading a book or they need a packet, what are we going to do? You know, at the time we weren't sure how we were going to pull a lot of this off. And so there were times where it would have been really in our best interest to get these materials home, and we just weren't able to do it. So that's one of the things that we wanted to address this year. So one of the things that we are asking teachers to do is, if they have things that they want to send home, if it's a novel, if it's a packet, if it's art supplies, I don't know, whatever it might be, that we're asking teachers to work with administration to set up a time. Matt and I have said we will stand out in the snow and the rain if we have to, and we'll stand out there with a cart, and we'll set up a time, and families can drive up, and just like a grab and go, we can just hand things off as you come up. So we don't want any student who is learning remotely to not have the things that they need. We're just going to ask teachers to give us a little lead time on that so we can make sure to clear our schedule. So for anyone who's remote, or if something goes home on a Monday or Tuesday that they need to have done before Thursday, Friday, we administrators are going to make sure that that happens, and that we're working with teachers to coordinate that in a way that's easy for parents, easy for us to distribute, but that those opportunities will be there. We definitely learned that from the spring.
Great.
Thanks, Kathy.
And that's it.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate you giving time on a Wednesday night. If you do have any questions, please reach out to us. I'll send out that remote link for those that are interested. We are so excited to have the students coming back into the building. It's really, it's the real joy of this job. And I can't wait to see kids for the first time in 6 months. Like I'm pumped. And so I hope that they're coming in ready. If they're anxious, let them know what you heard tonight. If there are things that we can do to help, please reach out to us. And until then, have a great week. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll see y'all on Wednesday.